always been the chance to experiment, and I think I've been able to do more new songs here, obviously, than any place in the world, for better or worse. But that's one of the magical things about the sidewalk, is that I see so many people doing stuff and trying out new stuff, and at the open mic every week. And sometimes I like doing gigs here where I just do all stuff that I don't really know how to do. So I decided I would do one of those sorts of gigs. So this is all just kind of stuff from the songbook, sketchbook of things that aren't really quite songs yet and might never be. But this is the place to do them. I mean, can't do this at the Mercury Lounge. Because it costs money to get in there. So. On the island of lost stores, on the island of lost stores, every street and every building, every retail thing on offer is a place you've been before. Yes, the last time that you went in, they said going out of business, but they'll be there when you visit at the island of lost stores. It's an island full of diners, full of awesome movie rentals, full of nasty pizzerias with the gum beneath the seat. And the menus at the diners might have raised their price a little, but it's still the same soup special that you can order on that street. The old bakery you went to and the shoe store with the murals both got carted off by forklift and shipped away to foreign shores. The little movie theater that hasn't vanished either, it's not here but it's still somewhere on the island of lost stores. The paperbacks in the bookshop with old pages cracked from flipping, it was tough packing up and shipping, but they're unpacked and reshelved. And if you wonder where some club went, it's been plucked off its foundation and shipped off to that island nation. Just how it looked and how it smelled. The arcade game for 4 players and porno mags and in layers in that old smoke shop with ice cream and cigars someone still buys. The toy store from 14th Street next to Poster Mat on 8th Street, and in Munchie's Burger Shop they still wave spatulas at flies. 'Cause on the island of lost stores are the shops that must be somewhere, the ones that couldn't really be gone 'cause your memory's too clear. They might have been here 3 years or been in your life for decades, but side by side out on that island are all the ones that shut down here. 'Cause we're just simple humans, we were born for simple landscapes that were part of our life story, like that river and that hill. Except for rare catastrophes, the mountain we might see there, our whole lives we knew would be there, and when we died would be there still. But we sailed into a crazy place someday, somehow by accident, into this bubbling environment that melts right through our hands. A world made out of lava leaves a heart that's full of ashes, but there's still a place that catches what gets tossed off from our land. That's the island of lost stores, where every record shop and venue, every restaurant and laundry is a place you've been before. If the last time that you went in they said going out of business, then they'll be there when you visit at the island of lost stores. 'Cause you can close your eyes and see exactly how the doorway opened, so it's too hard to believe you can't walk in there anymore. Of course they wouldn't crush them, they just pick them up and move them, and they're open right this minute on the island of lost stores. On the island of lost stores, every street and every building, every retail thing on offer is a place you've been before. Yes, the last time that you went in they said going out of business, but they'll be there when
Okay. Hi, howdy, hello there, good buddies. Your old pal Clayton Patterson down here, 161 Essie Street, holding down the fort. And today I am with,
Jeffrey Lewis, hello.
Maurice Narcissus.
and Maurice is the producer, the runs the camera, and often he's behind the camera, so he's not often in the shot, but today he's in the shot. He's the one that suggested Jeffrey, which is great. I've known Jeffrey for years. Where are you from, Jeffrey?
East 9th Street originally, and then my parents moved over here to Avenue A.
What year did they move to Avenue A?
What's that?
What year did they move to Avenue A?
Like 85 or 86 or something like that?
Really? Oh, at that time, I always thought that they were on 9th Street, because 9th Street was a very interesting street.
Yeah, it's a lot more interesting than the co-ops. I was very depressed as a child about that move because that block was such a real community.
Well, all of 9th Street. 9th Street is one of the strangest streets in Lower East Side. There's been all kinds of crazy murders and things that you go up and down 9th Street, whether it be Rockaway. You had like the provost, like Lee Penn. You remember Lee Penn?
Oh, sure.
With the dog with no hips, and you'd ride around with the motorcycle in the sidecar.
Yeah, well, the first Irving, the earlier dog, was the smarter one that was like really good about riding in a sidecar. And then when Irving died, the second dog, at least the second dog in my lifetime, he probably had earlier dogs. That dog wasn't as smart and ran out in the street and got hit by a car and was like paralyzed. And,
Oh, that's the one that you
that's
used to
like
have to lift up the hips.
yeah.
German Shepherd.
Yeah, the second dog, I don't remember that dog's name, but Irving was like the famous dog that would always ride around in the sidecar, and there was the mural with Irving on the side of Veselka for many years.
Actually, Lee Penn had been involved with Yippies, he had been the provost. Actually, on that block, there's a little white on the outside of a building, a little in red writing that said provost.
Huh, yeah, I don't know that. What's that about?
That was a Dutch anarchist group.
Right.
And they were big on bicycles.
Huh.
And I think they were probably part of the pot thing, right? Because there was a lot of pot in that block at that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just a kid. I was born in 75, so my time on that block was up until when I was about 10, 11 years old.
Oh, okay.
There's certain things I remember. I remember all the people that would hang out. Lee Penn and Bill Kaufman was a guy I used to buy. He was into comic books, so once in a while he would sell comic books out on the stoop there, and that was always very exciting to me.
And then you had the witches on the block.
Sure, the witches.
Magical enchantments.
Yeah, now they're further down the block, but they would have these Halloween rites and stuff. I never knew what was going on back there, but I don't know how much that was like exaggerated to me as a kid, like whether how much witchery was actually going on. But I remember that was like pretty cool as a kid.
Well, they were definitely into it.
Yeah.
And the source was on your block too, right?
Sure. Well, Santo and Margaret are still over there. I still, I make a huge amount of stuff over there at the source. I'm in there like, maybe once a week or something. I'm printing, flyers for my gigs. I'm printing zines. I'm printing, posters that I drew. I'm in and out of there constantly.
I did a comic book out of there.
Yeah, and what's also cool about it is like the collection of stickers that they have at the front. Like you see like a whole history of local performers and stores. Flipping through their stickers, it's like, oh, Joey Deblon girlfriend and Latch and all. There's like all these stickers going back, 10 years, 20 years, all these different artists and musicians and different local businesses.
That's a collection. That's like Jerry began science.
Yeah, stuff like that is cool. Cool archive of stuff. And what was next door there, which I remember really made an impression on me as a kid because it was just so weird. There was the mural, the psychedelic mural that said the psychedelic is the creator.
Oh, right,
from
the
this,
temple
like,
of the True Light.
Yeah, and I was, that was just it was the 80s, so it was really a different era from, but this sort of weird echo of psychedelic 60s
that's right.
bohemianism that really affected my youth and my kind of perception
of that.
Yeah, it was just so weird. I mean, meanwhile, I was growing up, it was like the 80s, it was the time of G.I. Joe and Rambo and all this stuff that had nothing to do with the 60s at all. The culture that I was
They had some sort of
involved in was very
synthetic
different.
plastic drug that would get you high like a psychedelic, but it was legal somehow.
Huh.
So they used to do this dosing of people. Dosing, I guess. into their own little private religion and cult and that whole sort of thing. See, that was just your, and then you had the baker on your block, the Jewish, Orthodox Jewish
For
baker.
a long, long time.
For a
yeah.
long, long time, big beard. He had, and then you had Jan did the Tai Chi.
Right down, that was the building I grew up in. Was,
Oh, you grew up in that
He was in the
building?
basement there, yeah.
Okay. Is he still around?
I haven't seen him in a long time. I
No,
don't
but
know.
Carrie was on that block.
Who is that?
Remember Carrie? Carrie used to do like MNN TV shows, the video camera guy.
Maybe if I saw him, my parents would probably know.
Yeah, they would know. Yeah, that was, and then I think there was even ceramics on that block, right?
Yeah, that place closed pretty recently. If it's the place that I'm thinking of. I mean, well, there's so much stuff. I mean, it's funny because I just know that block because that was like the block I grew up on. But you know that block, but you must know 50 other blocks.
Well, like that, yeah. But that was an amazing block you grew up on. And then there was one day a year where the sun used to come up where it used to set. Everybody used to go to 9th Street and watch the sun set because it went all the way
Yeah.
down, straight down. Do you remember that?
It's a very straight street. Yeah, my dad claims that he thought he was the first person to discover that phenomenon. But I guess a lot of people probably thought they were the first person to
Well, I heard
discover
about it because of Lee Penn and those guys. So
Uh-huh.
they probably got that from your
Yeah.
father.
or something. Yeah, who knows? But yeah,
And your father, he used to be kind of known because he used to go to Maine in the summer and Mexico in the winter.
still does.
So how did you
He's-
survive that?
He's 82 and he still
Is
does.
he
He still
82?
does that. Yeah.
Actually, if you look in the recent Village Sun, a new newspaper with the executive editor, Lincoln Anderson, if you go to photos, you'll find a picture of Jeffrey's parents in there.
Yeah, Joe and Wendy still. Well, I mean, they're just like it's funny walking around the streets, like seeing. Because it's now that I'm like living back in the old neighborhood, and I just bump into my parents in the street, like anybody. If you walk around the streets of New York City, you would assume that a lot of people walking around are not longtime residents. You would figure it's New York City, there's millions of people, these must just be visitors or newcomers. But when you live, being around, there's actually a pretty high percentage of the people walking around that have been here for decades.
Well,
I'll see you around, I'll see,
but not
you
so
know-
often. You see, that's one of my whole things about gentrification is it's the washing away. When I think of that block that you were on, we just named some of the businesses that were on the block. There were more.
oh sure, but
And so each one of those businesses was substantial, and each one of those businesses made up a neighborhood. And it really was, in its own way, like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
I always
mean,
tell
it
that to
really
people,
was.
I'm like, it was like Sesame Street.
It was like
the
Sesame Street.
friendly drug dealers and,
Yeah, because on that
just
block, they sold
colorful
GQ, I remember
weirdos.
that was a Coke name that was on that block, because I was sort of familiar with the drug trade down here. And, yeah, there were definitely a lot of pot dealers on that block, big time pot dealers.
yeah, I would have been too little to
Yeah.
be aware of that stuff, but it was
But
just
all
so
that
much
stuff
fun.
just got
as a-
homogenized
yeah.
in, like they had the
Yeah.
dog barbecue, you remember the
Oh,
dog?
sure, yeah. Well, that's one of my greatest regrets is I had a wonderful 9th Street
Oh,
Dog
t-shirt.
Barbecue shirt. I had the red
Ah,
shirt.
Yes.
And I lost it on a tour. I had a bag of laundry that I did
Oh.
somewhere in like Holland, and I left the whole bag of laundry at somebody's place or
Oh,
somewhere.
no.
And I had that completely irreplaceable 9th Street Dog Barbecue t-shirt.
Yes.
Maybe there's a couple more of those shirts floating around somewhere, but it's,
I got one
That's a
somewhere,
rare
if I
item.
never find it, I don't know, but you see, that block was magical. As
it certainly
so many
was
blocks
to me.
were.
Yeah, it really was to me as a kid, but it's all, for me, it's all really tied up in just the magic of childhood, It's interesting for me to hear that block was magical to you, because to me, it just holds this like mythical, magical thing, like the old days, my childhood, East 9th Street, but it's interesting to hear that it was magical to somebody who wasn't 7 years old.
Well, if I just think about what we named on your block, and I think that I come from Western Canada. Western Canada was like a desert, there's really not much there. So all of a sudden in your block, we're talking about Tai Chi, we're talking about the Provost, an anarchist group from Holland, we're talking about witchcraft from what was the name of the store again?
Enchantments.
We're talking about ceramics, we're talking about, all this different art that was made in that block.
The temple of the
Temple of True
Light,
Inner Light,
and
take you back to the 60s.
all these businesses that you just named
Yeah.
were like
that was like about 20 feet worth of that block.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
right.
And
That's
then you go
exactly
further,
right.
then you have Billy playing the saxophone on the
Yes,
street.
up in the corner.
Zelka's on the block.
Yes.
The baker, the shoe cobbler.
And Billy played the sax, and he was a jazz guy. And I think he sold clothes or something from Morocco or somewhere like that. Cause remember he used to wear the kufi
Yeah,
hat?
he's still there. You
Is
still
he
see him
still there?
wearing the hat. He's
Oh
got
my
his little
God.
shop there. Well, and next door
Then you had
to my
Kiev.
parents.
Not
Yeah,
Kiev,
well that
Veselka.
Veselka, which is of course still there in that same muralist.
Is that
And
still there?
yeah, next door to me, they both passed away, but Steve Collins and his wife Liz, they were magicians, and they were our next door neighbors. And now, can you imagine what it was like as a kid to have magicians
Yeah.
as your next door neighbor?
Right.
We'd go over and hang out with them, and they would like produce, he would like he would light a match and turn it into a rose for me or something,
Right.
Just unbelievable, literally magical to live on that block as a kid. Have these like
So
bohemian
that was
magicians
the
living next door.
education that one got in New York in the past. It was an enriching, you could never get this kind of education in a school because it's so broad. I mean, Veselka was Ukrainian food.
And it was one of, many. It wasn't like, Leshko's was actually the spot that if we went out to eat, once every 2 months, there was like probably like, Leshko's might have been a place where I would get a hamburger. I don't think we were in Veselka that much, but
Veselka was always a bit more expensive. But Leshko's, do you remember the 99-cent breakfast? Were you around for that?
that doesn't ring a bell.
Oh.
I'm sure my dad must have had it on occasion.
Oh.
But of course, that was recommended again. Everybody would be like, you can't raise kids in New York City. You can't raise kids in this neighborhood. Because, I'm sure the kids that I knew when I was little, and my parents and the parents of those other kids in the neighborhood, were probably considered completely. That was like a horrible, stupid thing to do, to have a family in this horrible neighborhood. And
So do you remember street gangs and all that stuff?
it wasn't until I was like a teenager that I became, that I felt under threat. That being mugged or being threatened became. When I was a kid, I never felt
So
threatened.
you grew up on 9th Street, and that was between
First and
3rd and 2nd. So that's one block off of 8. And no question on 1st Street, you had all the rastas selling pot and things. That was on the street. You definitely had coke and drugs being sold on your block. I think, do you remember Agatha's Custom Leather?
Leather, no, a leather shop.
Yeah, another shop. Another one of those little
Yeah.
20-foot stores. But, yeah, you see, that's the thing about New York City and how complex it was. No question, if you went down towards Avenue D, did you ever go down towards D and as a kid, or did you always find
No,
it threatening?
well, it's funny of course, everybody, a million people have these New York City stories of like, it was different in the old days, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you could say this, every city was different in the old days,
Right.
but yeah, you just would not go, if there was no reason to go east of Avenue A, it was, you would immediately start feeling like this tension and this threat. I remember, I took piano lessons when I was a teenager from a guy who lived on 4th Street and Avenue D, Rob Harden, a great musician. I think he moved to White Plains or something.
You live in a tenement or the projects?
He lived in a tenement. He was on the west side of Avenue D in a tenement on 4th Street, and this would have been, maybe around 1990 or something like that. And it was, he had to like escort me back, after I had a piano lesson with him, and I was maybe 16 or something. He would have to walk me back from Avenue D to Avenue A, because it was like you needed an escort just to get, through those 4 blocks.
Right.
And nowadays you wouldn't think that, but, I mean, this is, a long time, this is 30 years ago.
Well, there were definitely a lot of, was he a white guy?
Yeah,
Because there weren't that many white guys living on Avenue D at that time.
and he had long hair, he was, and he had a lot of, a very small apartment, but he had expensive, I mean, I didn't know anything about like musical gear, but he had keyboards and amplifiers, he was like a serious musician, so he had all this
Down
stuff.
where Satan City Nomads clubhouse was, between C and D, between 3rd and 4th. And that's where I got the shit beat out of me by the police, was on Avenue D and 4th Street after the casitas burned down there. It's a long, complicated story, but I wonder if he was around for that, because I'm still looking for people. Because it was a very dramatic scene. I really had the shit kicked out of me by the cops. And it's a long story, but,
Well, I could probably get in touch with him.
how old is he now? He's probably 80.
Well, how old was he? I mean, if he was maybe in his 20s or 30s, so now he's probably in his 50s now, I guess.
Oh, cool.
I don't know, I
Yeah.
haven't really, I haven't.
Tom
stayed
DeVito
in
used to
contact.
tattoo down there on 4th Street, so that was the whole thing. But yeah, it was going down below Avenue A was the whole thing. But when you grew up in the neighborhood, you didn't go down there, the neighborhood was not threatening at all to you.
No, I never felt any, it wasn't until, like late 80s, but it was also, it's hard to say if it was just the era, gangster rap became a thing around 88, that was like, I always used to really like rap when I was a kid because it was just fun and funny and, Run DMC and all this stuff, but then when the style changed and became much more violent and aggressive, and the music that kids were listening to at my school, and just the whole vibe just became very aggressive and threatening.
Right.
And I was always just like a little scrawny kid, so it wasn't, I was always like pretty low in the peck. I was just, drawing my comic books, and I was just kind of a classic nerd.
Well, were you into hardcore at that time?
No, I was just, when I started getting into music, it was just classic rock. It was just like hippie stuff, I started getting into the Rolling Stones and the Grateful
Okay, so
Dead.
before we go there, I also want to mention Flower Power was on your block, right?
Yeah, that's
Right.
still there, right?
Yeah.
Just east of First Avenue, I think.
Second Avenue. Remember they had the other place across the street? Maybe it was First Avenue.
I can't picture it, but I know that business name, and I think they are still,
Yeah.
they have a place
Because
still.
that was making sort of different, herbs and different mixtures for health and all that. So that was one of those, just another form of people designing medicines and pharmaceuticals. I mean, you had all this variety of education is what I'm getting to. And you learn all of these different things just by the fact that you're there.
Sure, well, of course, there's all this stuff that I wasn't aware of. People are always like, oh, you grew up there, did you ever see the Butthole Surfers at CBGB's or Sonic Youth? I was like, no, I have no awareness of it, I was just a kid. I didn't, I could, if I had been more hip, I would have known more about,
So how did you get into music and art? Because you eventually became an accomplished, you're recognized in both fields now. One is, would you say a cartoonist, illustrator?
Time flies like an arrow, baby, in a wheelbarrow swing where the wind blows static on the radio now. Bats eat fireflies, look at how the time flies swing where the wind blows static on the radio now. Staying up all night looking at the moonlight, saw another bat fly and a firefly die. No more grapes left, no more tapes left, no more time left, no more space left. Think the DJ left his booth, I'm staring at the roof and there's static on the radio now. Time flies like an arrow, I'll be a man tomorrow. The world is quiet as a rainbow on the TV now. I will stay awake, the tooth fairy won't take all my teeth away. A rainbow on the TV now. Take my teeth to the cemetery, don't walk up the spiral stairway. Monkeys and babies are scary, my mom is not the tooth fairy. Think the DJ left his booth, I'm staring at the roof and there's static on the radio now. There are daisies, sweet old ladies, bats and babies. There are no babes, no wheelbarrows, no tooth fairies, no tomorrows. Where's my past and future? When did the wheelbarrow fall off the roof? Where the tooth fairy put my tooth? And when did the DJ leave his booth? Time flies like an arrow, I'll be a man tomorrow. World is quiet and there's static on the radio. I'll stay awake, the tooth fairy won't take all my teeth away. Static on the radio. Think the DJ left his booth, I'm staring at the roof and there's static on the radio now.
were kind of everywhere. You know, at the newsstand, there would be comics at Ray's, comics at Gem Spa, comics would be in a pharmacy, comics might be in a supermarket. And then when there started to be actual comic book stores, that was like really cool too. But yeah, just always into drawing, always wanted to draw and make comic books. And I didn't really get into music until, you know, well, that was just, you know, the Sidewalk Cafe and the open mic on Monday nights at Sidewalk on East 6th Street, that was kind of my introduction to playing music, playing the open mic. But that was much later. I mean, I was out of college already. I was, you know, this was
really?
late 90s.
Do you have like guitar and stuff at home?
Yeah, my parents always had,
Acoustic guitar?
yeah, an acoustic guitar. My mom would play, my dad would play. So there was always a guitar around.
Right.
And when I got out of college, I was living in my grandmother's apartment on West 28th Street, and there was my father had a guitar that was over there also, so I started messing with that guitar, and then I knew that Sidewalk was free, so I would just always go to Sidewalk, and then when I found out they had an open mic there, I started playing at the open mic, and that kind of started me being involved with
So
playing
what
music.
year was that?
97?
Okay, so you didn't really play in public before that?
No.
Really? You
No.
never made the rounds, Pyramid?
No,
Really?
not at all. I was just strictly drawing. I did take piano lessons from that guy
Right.
on 4th Street, but
You never joined a group?
no, I was just not. I mean, I had friends that were musicians,
Yeah.
but I was just never one of them. I was like the drawing guy. But then, yeah, Sidewalk was just such a great kind of open door policy where anybody could just walk in and play, and I met these other songwriters, and it was,
So that was
you know,
really
David
Latch.
Peel would sometimes be in there, Latch was of course, you know, and I was like a fan of Peel's record and stuff, and, you know, Latch was running this whole scene there. John Berger had a little fanzine called Antimatter, it's about the anti-folk scene. So it really just seemed like there was a thing going on. It was like
There was.
it was like a community, and I just, you know, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to hang out and see all these people play their songs, and I would just hang out with my sketchbook and draw the people. And after hanging out there long enough, you know, so many nights and weeks and months of just being there all the time, I sort of got absorbed into that. You know, I started to know a lot of those people and just be absorbed into that scene. And I was playing the open mic and playing shows there.
As a solo?
Yeah, my brother Jack, my one sibling Jack, he grew up with me on 9th Street and Avenue A and everything.
I don't think I've ever seen your brother.
He's been living out in Oregon for about 10 years now, but he would play with me sometimes. He started playing bass, so it would be like sort of mostly my songs, but then Jack would join me a bit, so it was something that we would do together, making up songs together. And then when I started doing tours and making recordings, Jack was like part of my band, so we got pretty involved in doing the music stuff. But it was never really part of the plan originally. I just wanted to make comic books. But since you have this intimate knowledge of 9th Street, you must have, it's amazing to me that you know all that stuff that's like, I probably could throw any, you know, well, what about, 11th Street between 2nd and 3rd, or, you know, you have an intense geographic knowledge of the whole spread of the neighborhood.
Not the whole neighborhood, but actually 11th and A, and between A and B was where they had Bad Boys, which was a whole coke ring from the 90s that was really notorious and dangerous and out of control. And the Hitmen were over there.
So you should do something like Gangs of New York, but an updated version of all the nefarious, you know, a catalog of all the nefarious places and people and things that went
Well,
down.
maybe we should do a project together.
Yeah, well, I don't have the knowledge. I mean, you've got the
drawing
knowledge.
skills. Maybe we could do, I would not want to redo Romberger's map, but, you know, there is, it's an interesting idea. We should think about it.
Yeah, well,
Because,
there's no shortage of projects, but it's just cool that you have all that
Would you be
knowledge
interested in
stored away.
something like that or not?
Well, of course I'd be interested in it. I could
Whether
say
you have
yes,
the
but
time.
would I have the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to say yes to something, and then when it
Of
comes
course,
down to it, it's like, well, first I gotta finish this, and this.
Yeah, no, I know. 'Cause
Uh,
we're working with Julian Veloce. He did the Ghetto Brothers illustrated graphic novel.
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
But I love James Romberger's stuff. I mean, I
James,
read a lot of his
yeah,
stuff.
David Wojnarowicz.
Yeah.
David Wojnarowicz, that's classic.
Yeah, and the map,
that
you know, his
cover-
map, of course, is also, yeah,
And the map is classic.
yeah.
But one of my hopes is that so much of the neighborhood was important and so much of the fame is unknown outside of the neighborhood. Like a lot of the people that really made the impressions on people are still yet to be discovered. We agree with that.
Sure.
I mean, we can certainly say, even just a couple of names, in terms of, see, I do these Actor Awards, and the Actor Awards is also about the venue and place and like that. So two people, if we think about that we've mentioned that have had huge impact on the neighborhood, but I've talked about that much, is Santos from
Sure.
The Source on your block, and the other one is Latch.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so many people came out of the anti-folk movement, it's crazy, and some of them went
Yeah.
on to become very famous.
And so many people had such a good time there, you know, there was just night after night, it was
Yeah.
like an ongoing scene for, you know, 20,
For
30
years.
years, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It was
'cause I
like the
remember
unknown.
He
the
started
unknown
off at
scene.
Sophie's
Yeah, that's
on
right,
Fifth Street.
yeah,
Yeah, between A and B.
yeah,
And then that was like mid-eighties. And then eventually
Yeah.
he did some in the Pyramid Club, and then he moved over to, did he go to Niagara, or
there
did
was
he
a
go to
place
Sidewalk?
called Chameleon that I never was at.
Oh, the Chameleon,
but,
yes. I used to the
I-
Tattoo Society there.
I know
Oh,
that they.
6th Street.
Yeah, I think that was like on that block.
It was.
Uh,
That was, but it was further east.
Yeah, so it moved, Latch's scene moved around a little bit. By the time I encountered it, it was firmly planted at Sidewalk.
And it lasted there for years.
Yeah, well, it just closed a few months ago.
Oh, when did, but he left, I think he
Latch has
went to
been out of the
Scotland.
country, yeah, I saw him over the summer, in Scotland. But, yeah, there's so many amazing, well, you're one of the, you know, artistic linchpins of the neighborhood. If somebody was gonna do a Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club album cover of all the neighborhood characters,
Wow,
you'd be right up in there. I mean, Jim the Mosaic Man,
course,
another
Jim,
like,
of course.
I mean, it's amazing, just the interesting, and somehow, I mean, despite the gentrification and the rents and everything else, somehow you're still here, Jim's still here, Santa and Margaret are still there,
Well, I think
Billy's still there, you know, there's
Yeah.
there's people that are still
Well,
got
that's why I'm happy that,
place.
you know, we're doing this with Maurice, because I think it's really important to keep the history, because we don't keep our own history, who will. But the other part of it is that, you know, it is a struggle. And it is a struggle to keep the, you know, maybe it's like moving from the craft age into the industrial age. I mean, that's kind of what we're going through now. This whole gentrification thing is huge. It's bigger than what most people think or ever talk about. Because once you hit the digital part of it, then we're talking about kings like Facebook and Amazon and you know, kingdoms really. And so how do you keep, like the people that were trying to keep craft alive at the time of the Industrial Revolution were kind of fighting a losing battle. But thank God some of it remained. Because that's what America is about, really. America is about the individual and the contribution each individual can make. And once it becomes too international corporate, then you lose all of that.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that you know, a neighborhood like this, and there's other pockets of the world at different places and different times, where you have a sort of free zone. It's like a little bit of like a kind of Wild West thing, where the authorities aren't paying attention. There isn't enough profitability
Left
for
Bank
the,
in Paris,
the
beginning of the 20th
yeah,
century.
and you could
Late
there's
19th.
all these places and times
Yeah.
where enough of free space exists where people can live cheaply enough
Right.
that you can just be weird. You don't have to devote so much of your energy to like,
And there has to be a money input somewhere. And that's why when you look at like Seattle, for example, how did Seattle ever become that place? I mean, it's always been San Francisco, New York, LA. You know, once in a while Chicago, jazz, you know, spoken word, stuff like that, but, you know, cattle. But really, it's New York, San Francisco, LA. And somehow Seattle, and then now the time the Starbucks came out, smashing, you know, all this music, Nirvana, it's just for that moment of a couple of years, boom, Seattle was the place. And you've actually become, what's the name of your group?
well, currently we're going by Jeffrey Lewis and the Voltage, but I keep changing the name. It's always Jeffrey Lewis and this, Jeffrey Lewis and that. I never really settle on a name permanently. I guess if I found a name that I really liked, I would settle with it.
So are you a group?
Yeah, at the moment it's myself plus Brent Cole on drums, and Brent drummed in Doofus, who Maurice had a long association with Doofus, and Maurice came on tour with Seth from Doofus and myself. We did a whole tour in England and Europe way back in 2002 that Maurice was along for. Yeah, Brent formerly, and Brent was also the drummer in the Moldy Peaches. So he's kind of been, I've known Brent a long time. He
Because
was,
the Moldy Peaches, I don't know that band, but I just
So I've known Brent for about 20 years, but he's been drumming in my band now for maybe about 4 years. And Mem Paul was playing bass and keyboard, and Mem was somebody I just found because I happened to need a bass player. The woman who was playing bass with me was what's the name of this band? There's some bigger, more famous band snapped her up to be the bass player, so I was like in need of a bass player. So Mem came in, and yeah, so it's been me and Brent and Mem for about 4 years now.
Michelle Schock was before you.
Yeah, I've met Michelle a couple of times.
She went on to be very famous.
Yeah, well,
She's almost for the Chameleon time, right?
yeah, that's like an earlier era of the scene, but she's come back. You know, a lot of people kind of come back through at various times. And Michelle was rehearsing at my apartment because they needed a place. They were like doing a show with Steve Espinola, a piano player that I know. They needed a space to like run through some stuff. So yeah, there's like all these like random connections and stuff through the sidewalk. I mean, the sidewalk was a little unknown music scene that nobody really cared about in the wider world, but so much stuff went on there. It was a great spot.
You know, that's interesting. Even after years of it, it still never became like the go-to place.
Right. Thankfully, I mean that's probably what saved
Probably
it
what saved
from.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it became like an inside place.
Yeah.
Not by choice, just
Right.
happened.
Just accidental. Yeah. It was never
But
hit.
if people look back and think that Michelle Schock came out of there, you guys came out of there, Jeffrey Lewis.
Well, there's a lot.
Peaches,
You know.
I mean, Latch. I mean, so
Yeah,
many people that people would pay good money to go see them at Mercury Lounge or somewhere else.
Yeah, well, it's funny because a lot of people, there's like fans from England and Europe that, you know, to their mind, that scene is a thing. They're like, oh wow, we're gonna go to New York and like, we want to see the famous sidewalk. And then it was always like a bit embarrassing, like, oh man, now they're gonna see that it's really like,
12
it's not so
people.
famous after all. Yeah, it's just like a little room with 12 people in it, and you know, all these. But that's what kept it cool, you know. It never.
There's no question people came out of there. There's no question it was a scene. There's no question great music happened. There's no question that Latch made an indelible mark on the fucking music.
Absolutely.
Without question.
Yeah.
But if you watch through it on a Sunday night, look like, what's going on here? I don't know, let's find CDs.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a total hodgepodge without that much quality control, but that's what made it cool. I mean, in David Byrne's book, How Music Works.
Fucking Snooky. 1, 2.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Kristen, why don't you count it up?
1, 2, 3.
Recognize my silhouette, I'm Snooky. I'm the greatest grand Guidet, I'm Snooky. 4 foot high, cute as hell, I'm Snooky. I'm the reason that Rome fell, I'm Snooky. Drunk in public in the bar, fools think I'm an easy mark. I'm trashed and disorderly, but they're not the boss of me. They can't tell me what to do, I'm Snooky. Just in case you're keeping tabs, I'm Snooky. All my guys got awesome abs, I'm Snooky. Rough and rugged to the core, I'm Snooky. I roll and roll on Jersey Shore, I'm Snooky. Don't you try to shut me down, I'm the hottest bitch in town. When the cops come swarming up, that's when I start storming up. You can't tell me what to do, I'm Snooky. You know who I am, I'm fucking Snooky. You cannot do this to me, I'm Snooky. All you creeps are gonna be still party with JWoww, I'm Snooki. I got my own boxing team, I'm Snooki. I am living my own dream, I'm Snooki. Some folks say that I'm passe, others claim I've had my day, and that I'm deplorable. I know I'm still adorable. You still can't tell me what to do, I'm Snooki. You know who I am, I'm fucking Snooki. You cannot do this to me, I'm Snooki. All you creeps are gonna be real sorry. All you creeps are gonna be real sorry. All you creeps are gonna be real sorry.
Jeffrey Lewis, Peter Stanfield, Sidewalks, February 2013. I'm Snooki.
Or, every day the drive is like an hour or 2 hours. It's like nothing to get from London to Cambridge to Hull.
I know,
to-
it's some like the bands, all of a sudden the band finishes at 1 o'clock and people are partying, whatever, then you leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, you drive all night. Just very sort of dangerous.
But yeah, that's how these bands die. That's not a good way to stay
It's not a
alive.
good way to stay alive.
Yeah.
So you pretty well have it worked out, so it's just a working tour. You try to get out of there at 12:30, you go be motels close by.
Well, we usually stay at people's houses,
Oh, okay.
90% of the time.
That's a lot of people.
So it's, yeah, but they have to understand too, we're not there to party, like, we're just.
Yeah,
we need
you
some
don't
sleep.
sit up and talk till 5 in the morning.
Once in a while, you might get into that circumstance,
I'm
but,
sure, I'm sure that
but you
happens.
can't do it night after night.
No. And
Uh,
then it's, then you get up at, 10 o'clock and,
It depends. I mean, that's all my job. I organize all of it. So I have to tell the rest of the band tomorrow, we got to get up at 9:30. If you're going to take a shower, make sure you're awake at blah, blah, blah. I have to do all the tour managing and then be like, when we got to be on the road at, 10:30 because we have the sound check tomorrow, And then it always annoys me because everybody always asks me for the information. I'm like, look it up. I have it written down. Just,
right.
why are you asking me what time the sound check is? I wrote it down for you.
So then what time checks usually around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, it's a little different every day, but that's, yeah.
Yeah. Boy, that's, if it's all paced out and it's going steady and everybody's working on it, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a bit of a grind.
Yeah, I love it because I'm coming out of I feel like I was genetically engineered for this job because my dad, I grew up, I would take motorcycle trips with my dad. We just hippie traveling, having no money. And then when I was a teenager, I would go on Grateful Dead tours with my friend. We could travel around the country going to Grateful Dead shows.
Doing acid.
Yeah, me not so much, but them yes. But
There used to be a guy down the end of the
Yeah.
block here that was an old heroin addict. And it was really interesting for me because I used to document it. But he was a Grateful Dead follower. And I didn't know this till I met him, but Grateful Dead also had a real heroin pack that traveled with them as well. But he was a guy, he was a street guy. And so his hands would get really, really dirty, just caked in dirt. And he would shoot in the hands. He would have these abscesses.
yeah, it's
And
nasty.
he would pull out these abscesses, and they would heal. And it just sort of showed me, it's not necessarily dirt that kills you in terms of infections. I don't know why it didn't bother him, but it didn't. He'd have all this caked in dirt, and the abscess, he'd pull it out. And then
Yeah, that's
he'd heal.
rough.
But he'd be singing, down there in the corner, and, and he was a Grateful Dead guy. But he and his brother took acid and heroin at the circles of the trip. I don't know what happened to him. I should try to find that video. He was an interesting guy to converse with anyway. But,
Yeah.
there's
Just
some
that.
real Rolling Stones.
Yeah, well, just being
Grateful
involved
Dead.
with that kind of rugged traveling earlier in my life really prepared me for when I started playing music and going on tour. It was like, in the early days of my band touring, the conditions might have been rough, but I was totally used to it. So I was well trained to take on that kind of thing. So then by the time the band started to have more success, I was, now everything is like, oh, this is easy. This is not like the old days of tough traveling. Now we got it easy.
You now have those, what do you
Oh, yeah, right, the
what do you call
GPS, everything.
Yeah, God, you're looking for
Everything is much
you're looking
easier
for a
now.
venue, you just look on your GPS, and all of a sudden, boom, turn here,
Yeah.
turn there, go there.
It's amazing for
Yes.
touring bands.
phenomenal.
And then how I mean, in the '80s, bands had to book bands were booking tours with postcards and phone calls and.
And also, the system eventually changed. You know, once you got, what was it called, where they came and bought up all the venues?
Well, right, there's all these, like a Clear Channel or.
Clear Channel,
but that-
yeah.
that's on a bigger level, that's like, bigger venues.
But the other venues, they started getting smaller and fewer and less of.
It's, yeah, I mean, like anything, it's,
But there's
things
still a
are,
tour that you go on, like you say, you named a lot of cities there.
Yeah, and I could name all these venues in these cities, and all across Europe. I could do the same, Europe and England. I could name all the venues in all the cities and the travel routes, and you want to go from, Liverpool to Manchester to whatever, For some reason, I have all this stuff in my head. I never, it's not something I intended to have, but life takes strange paths, and now I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
and I
like in
toured
trouble.
around Europe with this Wild Style and Tattoo Message show, and we would go week by week. We'd be 3 days, one day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and next days you move to the next weekend, whatever. Yeah, I love the touring thing. Touring is great,
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. Well, you got to enjoy. The thing is, if you don't, like you were saying, it could be a grind. You have to enjoy. If you don't enjoy it, it'll really be a grind.
Yeah,
So you got to sort of get off on just the
Yeah.
travel and the weirdness of it.
yeah, the grind. But you're not big on drinking and smoking pot.
Right. So that helps. But I would get more worn down, I think. Yeah. But I'm also, I'm 44. It's not like I'm like a 21-year-old rock dude running around partying. And also, I'm basically a comic book artist. It's not like I'm Mick Jagger. I'm like a comic book nerd. So I just want to be, I find it great fun to just sit at my desk and draw a comic. I'm not like partying all night.
So are you, what are you more well known for, your comics or your music?
The music, I mean, if I'm well known or known at all for anything, it's the music.
I guess the music is a bigger audience that you can
Oh, yeah.
see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everybody listens to music. Not that many people
Yeah.
read comic books
That's right,
comparatively.
that's right. And comic books have gone through many different sort of market variations, where they
Yeah.
almost killed it, then it came back, and
Yeah, and
DC
like
was
underground
down.
comics, like weird underground like the comic stuff that I make. It's like a marginal part of it. It's not it's not Batman and Spider-Man. It's like a very marginalized.
Well, there used to
part
be
of comic
different sort of
culture.
like streams of that. Like they used to have, also with fanzines were big for a long time. And then you had Fact Sheet 5. You remember Fact Sheet 5?
yeah.
Where it would tell you all the fanzines and whatever they were and where they were and all that, which was amazing. Because at that time, I mean, Fact Sheet 5 was about 3/4 of an inch thick, and it's just all the different fanzines that were done in America
Yeah.
at the time. There were hundreds of them.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But this is like 8-ball radio. And so 8-ball radio is sort of coming back also because it's a youth thing. And it also has like fanzines and stuff like that. So that alternative culture is coming back. I didn't go to the PS show in, was it PS1 in Queens? The Museum of Modern Art there?
Mhm.
That was him good. But that independent publication thing now is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
like really fucking huge. So that culture is developing,
Yeah, there's
and
people
comic
out there
culture is still
making
around.
stuff. Yeah.
And certainly World War III has watched the generations go up and
Mhm.
down, up and down.
Yeah, well, there's so much stuff on the internet. All these comic artists put stuff on Instagram and stuff. It's your way of accessing it is different. It's not like finding a comic on a spinning rack at Gem Spa or something. That it's accessed in different ways. But there's all these artists making cool stuff. There's always people out there doing stuff. But comics in general compared to music are just not as big. The economy of comic books is very small compared to the economy of music. So even a very small musician like myself, there's still enough of an audience and there's enough money circulating even in this small level of music that there's an audience for somebody like me. Whereas comic books, there's just so much less of an economy in comic books, especially like sort of alternative comic books in general. Most of the comics that I sell are through my concerts. So I move a lot of comic books just through my music audience. Like people will buy the comics at my shows or will buy them on my website. But through comic book stores, it's very, very small. The distribution.
You want to pick up that comic right there?
Yeah, this is.
See, this is
That's like, and that's kind of like an old-fashioned thing, to be making a comic book like that. Nobody wants to do that anymore. Everybody wants to make these giant graphic novel books, but I'm just enamored of the old-fashioned, stapled, trashy comic book thing. That's what I love reading, and that's what I love making.
And this is all black and white.
Yeah, it's just the economics of it. Printing in color would be a lot more expensive, and
This is a story of you and your father?
yeah, I do a lot of stories about my father because he's always, he likes to talk a lot. And wonder where I get it from.
How did I guess that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. Hello, Joe. And that's your father.
Yeah. So he'll talk a lot. He doesn't take much prompting to talk of various adventures in the '60s and various weird adventures that he's been on. So sometimes I turn those into comic book stories, where I basically just take exactly what he says. I don't fact check him. I don't know how much he's exaggerating. I'll just do a comic book depiction of exactly. If he says it happened, I'll just draw it the way he says it happened. I don't bother to.
Fact check.
Yeah, it's more fun that way. It's not more
Right.
ridiculous.
And so this is issue number 11, and these sell for $3.50 each.
Yeah, I like to keep it cheap.
Yeah, that's great. And you have a distribution that this goes through? Is there like a
Yeah.
college circuit one can find this, or record stores, or?
They should be in record stores, but there isn't really much distribution. Yeah, comics always have a problem of distribution. Like,
Well, for a while you had Virgin Records for a while, that Virgin store. They used to be good at selling fanzines and other
yeah,
things.
that's a cool combination.
Yeah.
But those kinds of stores, those stores are all gone.
Yeah, they are all gone. Another one downtown was See Here.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, they sold a lot of alternative comics,
Yeah.
culture magazines, stuff like
Well, I
that.
have a collection of plastic bags. I should have brought this in. I have a collection of plastic bags of bygone businesses. I have a See Here plastic bag
Oh,
in my
really?
collection of plastic bags.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I was talking about in terms of gentrification, like books that could be done. I mean, we have Jerry Pagan, whose show is up here now, the deaf artist that was a sign painter. If you go through his sign book, you can follow the history of so many stores that were here, no longer here. And then if you go to the source, which you mentioned, you go there and you look
The
at
stickers,
the
yeah.
sticker book. All of a sudden, you'll see the bands and so many different things that were here. And this is the first time I've heard of this, but you have a plastic bag collection.
Yeah, I mean, it's not extensive, but I might have 10 or 15 plastic bags.
Ah. Like some would be like See Here's one,
Yeah, See Here.
Virgin Records,
Yeah, I probably have.
CBGBs.
Well, I don't know if they. I don't have any CBGBs related
Well,
stuff, but Wowsville Records had a cool bag. Dear Bertus Bakery, I probably got one of those.
From where?
Dear Bertus, the bakery on First Avenue.
They're gone now, right?
Yeah, they're gone. I don't know, businesses are always going, but once in a while a business had a cool enough plastic bag that I held onto it.
Yeah.
And now when I look at these plastic bags, I'm like, oh, it's kind a lot of record stores that are gone. God, I hope I have a St. Mark's Comics plastic bag. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't even something that I purposefully started collecting. At a certain point, I just realized, like, I've got some plastic bags
Yeah,
that are from long gone businesses.
Right,
So then I
that's
started, specifically, putting them aside and being like, okay, I'm not going to use these as garbage bags. I'm
Right.
going to preserve these.
Wow.
Well, I should wrap
Yeah,
up.
how are we doing here for time?
Great.
How much time we got on here now?
90 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's plenty.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is fun. I mean, I could go on and on, but I want to
that's
work on my comic. If I got to meet a friend for dinner, and I want to get some more work done on my comic before.
All right, so we always sign off with a happy note. And so
E flat. And if I could sing, I would sing a happy note.
you can sing a happy note. So we sing Happy Trails. So happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Okay, this is Clayton Patterson for 8 Ball Radio signing off.
Jeffrey
Here with
Lewis
Jeffrey
signing off.
Lewis
Clayton.
and Maurice Narcissus and Clayton Patterson signing off for 8 Ball Radio. Thank you very much. This time until next time. That's fun, right?
Yeah, that's great.
On your own heart. I had no place to put myself, but I had lots of time. I had no place to put myself, but I had lots of time. I had no place to put myself, but I had lots of time. So I threw out some past and made turn to be me. And you don't have to be a scientist to do experiments. You don't have to be a scientist to do experiments. You don't have to be a scientist to do experiments on your own heart. And now I'm running down the runway in between gigantic numbers. I'm running down the runway in between gigantic numbers. Now I'm running down the runway in between gigantic numbers, with my knapsack and a 0 for a halo. And my halo's got a hole in it, so it don't keep me dry. My halo's got a hole in it, so it don't keep me dry. My halo's got a hole in it, so it don't keep me dry. But it's okay, cause my brain is my heart's umbrella. And you don't have to be a scientist to do experiments. You don't have to be a scientist to do experiments. You don't have to be a scientist to do experiments on your own heart. I had a girl I had to leave, I saw her face upon my sleeve. I had a girl I had to leave, I saw her face upon my sleeve. I had a girl I had to leave, I saw her face upon my sleeve. It kept talking, so I put it in the laundry. And as it spun and spun, it tried to ask me what I'd done. And as it spun and spun, it tried to ask me what I'd done. And as it spun and spun, it tried to ask me what I'd done. But I was gone on down the road out to the wind. Cause you think patience is a virtue, and what you don't know can't hurt you. And that events can change and shape us more than we can change ourselves. And that conscious attempt at growth is stupid, and I should just relax and be myself. And you